Right, good morning councillors and staff. I'd like to ask Councillor Peebles to lead us in prayer. Thank you.
Almighty God, we acknowledge that we have a responsibility to look after your creation, especially this region we call Barcaldine Regional Council. We are also conscious that our decisions are going to affect deeply the lives, land and property of the people we've come here to serve. Remind us to exercise respect for each of our fellow councillors, staff and for the people of our region. Help us in this meeting to act wisely, justly and intelligently in all our deliberations. Thank you, Lord, for the privilege of both leading and serving, and assist us to do this well. Amen.
Amen. I have some condolences. Late Mrs. Gail Bode, formerly of Aramac, late Mr. Merv Terry, formerly of Muttaburra, and the late Mr. Terence or Terry Maloney, resident of Barcaldine, and our head of state's spouse, His Royal Highness Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. No further. If I could ask us to observe a minute silence, please. Thank you. No apologies on councillors present. Take this opportunity at the commencement of the meeting to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and the Barcaldine Regional Council more generally, and their elders, both past, present and emerging. Declarations of prescribed conflict of interest. Please, councillors, if I can start with Councillor Rogers. Councillor Rogers doesn't believe she has any. Councillor Plum.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would like to inform the meeting that I have prescribed conflict of interest in item 3.4.1, Planning and Development Report, as my employer, Elders Rural Services, as mentioned in section 1.2 of the report.
Thank you.
That is all.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to inform the meeting that I have prescribed conflicts of interest in the following items. 3.11, the Globe Tourism Lookout tenders, as a close associate of mine is a supplier of quotations for multiple tenderers, I should say. Also 3.1.2, the tender award gravel supply TMR Barcaldine Aramac, as a close associate of mine is tendering for the contract. Also 3.1.3, tender award full service reseals, as a close associate of mine has supplied quotations for multiple tenderers. And also 3.4.9, the works for Queensland funding allocation, in particular number 7, the Globe Tower lift, due to its association to previously declared prescribed COIs. And in accordance with 150 EM of the Local Government Act, I will leave the meeting and stay away from the meeting while the matter is discussed and voted on.
That's right. I'm aware of this. I'm aware of this.
Mr. Mayor, I have a prescribed COI in 3.4.5 due to the pathways being put into Porter Street. My home is in Porter Street, so I will be leaving the meeting for the discussion on that item. And I would also like to ask Council for some advice on 3.8.2. There is a letter there from the Aramac Rodeo committee asking for a donation to a bull riding school. I may have a grandson that would be interested in attending that school, so I think they have some sort of conflict.
Can I deal with 3.4.5 first, Councillor Peoples? Councillor, that report, do you have any questions unrelated to the area of your conflict of interest or any issues with any other items in that report that you'd like to address before you leave the meeting?
Yeah, I have one there that I'd like to ask a question on, Mr. Mayor.
Given that it's an information report, that's fine.
Right.
You ask your areas of interest, if you identify them at the commencement of the dealing with that report,
Right.
and then leave the room for
Okay.
the discussion of anything further to that. So specifically, so councillors are aware of what not to ask in your presence, your concern within that report is again,
Is the Porter Street pathways.
4th Street pathways.
Yeah.
And you intend to leave, sorry, and now say the bull riding. I'm assuming you're actually now using this as a declared conflict of interest.
Well, I think it's declared, but then you've got a close associate being a grandson that will participate in something the council may make a donation to. So I'm happy to be a prescribed or a declared, but I just...
I'd be interested if we stated a declared conflict of interest, councillors, what your thoughts might be. Go for the Gleeson.
I don't really, it's the association asking for assistance. I don't know whether Councillor Peoples has got any more of an interest in it than any of the rest of us really. It's his grandson. There is no money going to individuals.
It's a tricky one. Yeah. And Mr. Mayor, you know how I've always been, I'd rather lean to caution rather than take a risk, but I'll declare a prescribed and just leave anyway. That's the best, safest way to do it.
PCOI.
Yep. And that's it for me, Mr. Mayor, thanks.
Declared, I have no PCI that I'm aware of. Does anyone have a PCI that they wish to believe another councillor may have that has not been declared? Does any councillor present have a declared conflict of interest? Yes, Mr. Mayor.
I don't believe so.
No, Mr. Mayor.
Does any councillor present believe another councillor has a declared conflict of interest? Thank you. Minutes. We need a series of resolutions here. We have 2 sets of minutes to adopt. I have a resolution please to receive the minutes of the March general meeting. Councillor Henson, seconded Councillor Plum. Are there any, those in favour? Carried, 7-0. Any alterations, amendments, concerns with those minutes? Being none, can I have somebody please move that they be confirmed? Councillor Plum, Councillor Hanson. Those in favour? Carried, 7-0. The minutes of our special meeting that was held, I think, for the first time in history by Zoom. I haven't actually seen the recording of that to see how it worked. Anyway, it worked on the day, I guess, that's all that matters. I hope I never have to chair another one of them. Can I have somebody move that they be received, please? Councillor Gleeson, second, Councillor Plum. Those in favour? Carried, 7-0. The good thing about that meeting, I guess from your perspective, Councillor Arthur, you didn't need to ride push bikes from your house and chambers to declare an interest and then get on your push bike and leave and go home again.
Back, Mr. Mayor.
Those minutes, does any councillor have a alteration or a concern or an amendment? Being none, can I have somebody move that be confirmed? Councillor Hanson, Councillor Gleeson. Those in favour? 7-0. Does any councillor or officer present have a petition? Being none, move to on the agenda 3.1.1. I believe we have a prescribed conflict of interest for you, councillor.
In the next 3 items, Mr Mayor.
We'll be in and out, but yeah, that's fine. Can I have a resolution, please, that we move into closed session pursuant to section 254J3G? Councillor Hanson, second councillor People. All in favour? Carried, 6-0. Debate yet. Councillors, the resolution is that council authorises the CEO to sign a contract with ICM Construction for $1,376,915 for the construction of the Globe Tower, on the basis that this is the lowest price performing tender, and council amends the total authorised budget for this project to be $1,785,815. Do I have a mover for the resolution? Thank you, Councillor Plum moves. Seconder? Councillor Hanson, thank you. Will there be debate? Being none, put it to the vote. Those in favour? Opposed? Carried 6-0. Thank you. 3.1.2. Can I have somebody move? Are we moving into closed session here or not? Vic, is that your? Yep. 254J3G. Have somebody move that, please. Councillor Peoples, second Councillor Rogers. Are those in favour? Carried. Thank you, Aaron. 3.1.2, tender award gravel supply, PNR Park Hall and Aramac Road. The resolution is that we received the report and award the tender to Michael Horman Transport for the sum of $1,837,210 GST exclusive on the basis that it is the lowest conforming tender. We need to accept those words. Or not? Yes. Councillor Peoples, question?
I'll move that, Mr Mayor.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, can we change that this is most advantageous to council? This is the most advantageous to council. Yeah. Moved Councillor Peoples, seconder. Councillor Rogers. Debate. Those in favour? 6-0. Carried. 3.1.3, tender award full service reseal program. The resolution is that council receives the report and awards the tender to RPQ Mackay Proprietary Limited for the sum of $938,572.21 on the basis that this is the most advantageous to council. Councillor Hanson moves, Councillor Gleeson will second. Hanson Gleeson. Debate. Being none, all in favour? 6-0. Carried. Councillor Arthur is welcome to rejoin us. Somebody would be moved that my report be received. Councillor Peoples, second Councillor Gleeson. Those in favour? Receiving the report. That's what we're doing. 7-0. received, please. Councillor Plum, seconded Councillor Rogers. Those in favour? Carried. Questions?
Mr Mayor, I have a question, please.
Yes, Councillor.
Just to, and with regards to, we're just losing some staff and I think we've lost a couple of labourers in Aramac over the last fortnight. Are we going to replace those?
We have a number of positions that we are currently advertising, and we're continually advertising for roles.
Okay.
So I believe in the case of the Aramac, we combined the recruitment process. We had one recruitment process out for labourers, and we're taking advantage of that to also look for labourers in the parks and gardens area as well.
Okay.
So we are actively recruiting.
Okay. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Any further questions?
Mr Mayor, through you, on the same vein, are we still looking for or entertaining the idea of an occupational therapist?
Mr Mayor, all the information that we've got from all the recruitment companies is that you won't be able to get one. They're the most in-demand occupation at the moment.
So how do others get them and we don't?
Money.
So can we offer more than we are?
Can, but I don't think it's only money. You know, obviously it's career, it's location. So the last one that we were looking at had a choice between Cairns and Barcaldine.
Choice of all, yeah.
I went the wrong way.
We can't change location and we can't change that, but we can change what we're offering. So something that's costed to somebody else, cost goes another. Cost of the project, or cost of the rails borne entirely by a federally funded project. Aren't they?
As long as there's the work. So the other issue, and I just need to check how many Central West Health now has occupational therapists. I believe there's at least one in Longreach. And so that's, we'd be competing for the same work as what they're doing.
So
We haven't given up on the idea, but
It's just particularly difficult because of the position and some other factors.
So the recap, so Central West Health can attract to this region. Is that right? Well, here. Yes. We need to look at what they've got.
The benefit to that though, Mr Mayor, is Queensland Health, it's transferable. I guess they can still leave Barcaldine Regional Council and go somewhere else, but...
Especially if it's as in demand as the recruiting agencies are telling us. And
Yeah. But yeah, I just think it's a service that, yeah, if we are still interested in it, that we can look into it and...
Mr Mayor, I agree with Councillor Arthur. I think that on past reports that we've had about having an OT officer here and I think that was beneficial for us and I don't think we stop trying. It'd be just my only suggestion. We spend a lot of money but we keep it up there on some sites and be out there to try and get one more.
well, even the recruitment, would I be correct in suggesting that the HR and recruitment of that position would actually be costed to the program fee?
well, all we can recover from NDIS is the hours that we spend with the client. So there's not an aged care, oh sorry, there's some aged care element, so yes, we could allocate the costs.
Do we currently
Not to
allocate
NDIS.
HR recruitment costs in that area to any of the programs we're eligible to? Is that currently happening?
Yes.
On an actuals basis or a percentage?
on an actual, if it's directly related to that program, we allocate the cost of that program.
Any further questions? Sorry.
And I've just been informed that there is currently an OT in Barcaldine working part-time for Queensland Health.
Yes.
So we'd be competing with that person as well.
Opportunities, problem list. Further questions?
Mr. Mayor, but if that OT that's in Barking is working part-time and they're already here, I mean,
Yeah.
is
So we
it
may
possible
be,
to approach them with extra
Yes.
hours or something?
Really, Mr. Mayor, I don't think you'll do any good because I already asked. That's fine. But you can, like, approach her. She's only doing 2 days.
Further questions?
No questions, I'd still want to just make the point that in past discussions, the benefits to us to have an OT officer. Very good, so I still would like to pursue.
3.2, can I have somebody move the CIC be received? Councillor Gleeson, seconded. Councillor Hanson, those in favour? Carried, 7-0. Only thing we'll go through the correspondence one at a time. A letter of thanks from the Premier. A letter of thanks from the ICPA. A letter of thanks from the RLO group. QRA wanting us to spend that money. We're going to spend that money, or we have actually, that might be generic letter, but we spend our money on the flip book.
part of it, and Mr. Mayor, the other part is on the variable message boards.
Okay.
So it is spent.
And Department of Agriculture and Fisheries, are we intending to engage with Biosecurity Queensland on that? Given the number of feral pigs in this area. Front line.
Roughly, continue to look into that one.
The letter from the Exchange Hotel is not something we can actually action in that current form, but officers want to work up some recommendations on that for us, options. Likelihoods, we can't really do anything about it as simple correspondence. So if we can have that come back in another form, because there's a request for assistance there, but we can't do anything today. And likewise, there's a request for assistance in the Aramac Racing Club. We can't do anything with that today. In this form.
Does that need to come back to the district manager officer?
And needs to come back in the manner that Anna decides is appropriate.
Thank you.
We can't even resolve a resolution around it when it's presented in a report like that. It's information only.
Thank you.
333. This was discussed at Rapid in Blackpool. Rapid's undertaking a number of initiatives to raise the profile of the Central West as a live work location. There's other pieces being done just to simply provide a profile on Google search or use socials to get a feel for the area. This is a more involved, engaged production.
I highlighted Anna's on point 2 down the bottom. That's the only area that concerns me a bit.
And deliveries.
Yes.
Through you, Mr Mayor, is that for the whole Rapid area, or is that specifically for Barcaldine Regional Council for the funds that they asked for? Or
I'm
do
of the
they?
understanding, I'm not part of this discussion, but I'm of the understanding, talking to the communications team at Rapid, that there will be, if we proceed with production in this council area. That's my understanding,
Yeah.
but I don't have that. You could conditionalise it such if you wanted to in the resolution. If you wanted to support it, you could support it on the condition that there is. Yeah. I'm not going to speak in favour of or against the resolution. It's not really something that I have an opinion one way or against. Against or in favour of. I'm ambivalent to its chances of success.
Mr Mayor, with the approximate $18,000 depending on household size, where's that funding and when?
It's written there, the economic development budget. So the figure of 180, I think, was there at the start of the year. We use it for activities like this. There's still not 180,000 left in it, I know that, but there is funds, on the advisor's funds there.
Bruce, Mr Mayor, the success of reality television's sometimes relying on negative portrayal of things. It says here that the risk might be mitigated by partnering with an appropriate broadcaster. Is that what Rapid obviously is intending to do that, so they're intending, I guess there's no doubt.
The officer at Rapid that's leading this project is extremely experienced in media. Extremely experienced. So I would, and Neo is contracted to Rapid, not to the original company that she worked for. So her stated goal would be to present Rapid in a positive light, given what we're doing is, so the risk is a real risk. I acknowledge totally it is real. I would think, given the project management team, though, or officer, that we would be in the best position possible to influence that to the contrary, but there'd be no guarantee. If the film crew put a lot of effort and money into producing something, and they saw it as good TV and it was cut negatively, on the day, once it's out there, it's out there.
And Mr Mayor, in that same vein, if it was Channel 9 or Channel 7 directly, or one of these companies associated that do the likes of Big Brother, I would have serious concerns about it. But the list of people, Screen Queensland, Griffith University Film School, leans me more towards supporting it. If we could get some more structure around that figure, because that's $3,000 a month for the 6 months. So that's a fair bit of rent and electricity.
It was probably a worst case
Yeah.
scenario. I spoke to quite a few people. We've recently rented a number of properties in town, so we have a relatively good understanding of what the costs might be. And I have it on the side of caution in terms of that pricing. And the property would need to be furnished, so we may even have to bring in some rental furnitures, and that's been allowed for in the price as well.
And then the next question is availability of a property, suitable property, I should say, depending on how many it needs to accommodate.
That's right, because whilst we want it to be a realistic reflection of the region, we probably need to make sure that it's in nicer and lower quality.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the residents or the families that they're bringing in, they're coming for a real position, or they're just coming and just staying here? Are they actual residents that are moving into our region in real life, or are they just, it's a 6-month contract or something like they're just moving here and going away again?
Our commitment would only be 6 months. whether or not the family move up for a job prospect with council with another employer, or they choose to do like a tree change and they've already got an online type business, or they can work from home and they elect to work out here for 6 months to test the waters and see if they want to stay longer, or they may actually come out to set up their own opportunity out here as well. And I guess that would then come back to the broadcaster and their talent assessment and all that as well.
I guess I've got probably to rephrase the question. They're not targeting people who are already coming, they're going out and
It could be both.
could be either, yeah, so there could be someone who is already moving into the area, you know.
Decision time, councillors.
Mr Mayor, I'm happy to support.
Move to Councillor Harper, seconder. Councillor Plum, debate. Put to the vote. Those in favour? Against? 6-1. Carried. Councillor Peoples voting against. 3-3-4. Adam.
So this is to allow us to progress to the next stage of evaluating the Barkey Red motorbike trails concept. And one of the issues that have been highlighted to us when we've been doing some of our due diligence has been around the definition of a road. And because the motorbike trails would be open to the public, they would be classified as a road. So which would then preclude, or the road rules would then apply, so people who are unlicensed or riding unregistered bikes could potentially face the consequences if it was enforced. So we're looking at ways in which we can potentially open it up to unlicensed or unregistered bikes. And one option to do that is to amend our local laws, but also we'd be required to seek a declaration from the minister under a regulation that those particular trails are not considered to be a road under the Act. So that's what we're here to determine what the appetite is to allow unlicensed and unregistered bikes on the trails. So we can then determine what our next step is.
My first comment is why limit it to that area and not declare the whole common not a road?
The one we would have to then declare the whole area as a vehicle access area, or have different areas in order for us to then be able to impose different conditions around the use of the commons.
So I'm just thinking the stockmen and women who muster the common, we would almost exclusively would use unregistered bikes. If it was declared not a road, we would be safeguarding then, even if we chose at some point down the track to not proceed with this on the basis of risk. If we go through this process by clearing the issue about registered, unregistered from the common, we're bringing legal practice to match current practice.
So that, I think that would be a whole different puzzle of work we need to go on and investigate. Seek some legal advice on that one to determine what the potential impact is under the Civil Liabilities Act, and also understand what our risks and opportunities may be.
And that's a question for all commons.
Yes.
I know this is probably the next step up, but where does insurance come into this, you know? Is the people that are mustering the common, do they come under a common committee that has an insurance to cover them, unregistered bikes and underage? Or
where do we stand there? So once we have some clarity as to the ability for unlicensed and unregistered vehicles to be used on the trails, we'll then go through our risk assessment process and we will better understand those particular risks around insurance and what mitigation measures we can put in place to bring it back down to an acceptable risk.
So that's from a trails point of view, what the council was referring to existing.
But the other option was to have the common, like, are our people that are mustering the common, are they insured? No. How do we get on someone else?
According to this, they probably aren't.
Unless they're unregistered with a licence.
Three, Mrs. Mayor. I'm not sure if we've got enough information to just apply to the Minister at the moment, because we don't really know what exact area it is that you apply and not a road, like you said, why don't we do the whole lot, but like, do we actually have a specified area that we want to apply to have made not a road? Also, just a question like, King and Co's report on the risk, would we be able to see that, or did they have any solutions for us, other solutions in that report?
In order to be able to allow unlicensed and unregistered road users, they didn't provide any other options.
Only this. So this is their solution. On the first question, an area, do we know the area that we're asking to apply for?
We are still working through the actual trails, so we've been given copies of the location of the 2 trails, and we're just waiting on the third one to come through. And we'll have that information in order to go through to minister.
What are the first 2? Where are the first 2 I should be saying? You're concerned about if we apply for an area that, I think
Well, I think through Ms. Mayor, I think I'd just like to see the area that we're applying for, and maybe have a little bit more of more information. Maybe could the project manager perhaps give us an overview of what the risk.
So this is, the first step in the process is to see whether the minister will do it. Then this is not an authorisation to proceed from council. There's still a number of other processes we go through around risk to decide, but if the minister doesn't grant this, there's no point having those other discussions, is the advice from King & Co the way I understand it. Or there's then another option, you have to insist that they be registered and licensed and so forth, so it changes the scope of the project substantially.
Through Mr. Mayor, the thing is though, that if he doesn't grant it, then everything stops. So do we actually have enough to go with him, like to him to get, like we need him to accept like our application. So do we have enough that he's comfortable doing that for us? Is it hard to get his approval for this? Do you think that he might decline?
We sought some advice around that, and the lawyers have been unable to find any other examples where a similar declaration has been made. Doesn't mean to say it hasn't been made, we just haven't been able to find it. So part of it will be providing to them, the minister, to understand their appetite and understand the process as well of seeking the declaration.
There are off-road tracks and everything around other communities where they must have been granted some sort of licence and go ahead to do this, so I can't see that,
That would be a very broad assumption there, Councillor Peters.
Why is that?
Well, sometimes ignorance is innocence in a lot of way people approach risk.
Yeah, but there's also been a past precedent set where these other communities have had these motorbike areas set aside You know, there's lots of kids travel around Queensland and Australia going to bike events every weekend,
Oh,
and they're not licensed.
gazetted, sorry,
Yes,
motocross tracks.
Yes.
Yes, in addition is they're on an additional parcel, so there's the issues around land tenure then. So this is in an area where it is a road unless it's defined not to be a road.
Yep, and that's right, but, you know, this can happen to Melinda's, like this can happen, it's happened in plenty of places before. Back
Possibly not
to,
on town commons though.
well, I beg to differ that some of them would be on town commons.
Registered motocross track.
Yes. Well, is there one out here, Brett? Isn't there no motocross track just out here?
It's used.
Oh, I'm not doubting that they exist and they're used, but are they licensed for that use?
I'd say there are some around Queensland.
It's not a road reserve. So in fact, you would have to have a licence and registered vehicle
Okay,
to use
on
it.
that one, yeah.
And absolutely nobody would have.
Back to the other point there with Melinda with regards to a designated area. I think that if we're going to send anything to the minister, we probably need to know those areas because you would have to have a designated area in this first letter anyway, wouldn't you? Yeah.
The first letter will just be around understanding what the process is,
Okay.
what information we would need to provide to the minister in order to enable the minister to make a decision.
Okay, well that's fine. We don't need a designated area to go into that letter.
Well, that's not this resolution though.
No.
This letter this resolution authorises the application to be made. So I think council, am I hearing council, is that you'd like to know what area we're applying for? Councillor Gleeson.
Mr Mayor, I was under the belief that from the start of this, it's got Barkey Reds, but it was Barkon Regional Council. This is step 1, step 2, step 3. So we, Aramac, Muttaburra was definitely mentioned. So we have to be talking about 3 commons at least, or maybe 4 or maybe 5 commons, the whole Barkon region. So yeah, not just one particular area, or start this area, but there's my understanding of it is next phase, once they've got going, next phase was going to get moving.
I don't know that we'd be advanced enough in those or mature enough in those other areas to know and identify the areas to get this declaration made for them. But you could test the water to see whether the declaration's going to happen by using this one. If we go to a lot of trouble to get the other 4 areas identified, mapped, communities, sediment growing around, and then all of a sudden the minister's not going to allow it, then we're back. Like, it's probably better done in just one community in that respect than all 5.
This is a template.
Yeah, this can establish the precedent that we follow for the other 4 communities.
Yeah.
Okay, so how difficult will it be to get that map with the indicative locations? Do we defer this resolution till that's available?
Needs to now probably be more comfortable deferring till.
Councils?
Well, we either defer till we get a look at what the areas are, or we change the motion to say that we write an ask for what the process might be to go ahead and establish.
I think we can do that without a resolution.
Yep.
So let's defer this, if that's the intent. Let's defer this. Officers can find out more about the process when we get the maps. Know this, so that we agree with Councillor Rogers. Seconder, Councillor Gleeson. Council defers the decision to a future meeting. Full stop. Those in favour? Carried. 7-0. 3, 4, 1. Question? Sorry? Yes, Greg. Forgot my sheet, that's all fine. Okay, planning and development. Questions?
Mayor, the only update would be item 1.2 that has been approved. So a decision notice has been issued for that project, for that development.
There's still work underway with 1.4. I'm aware MPIs are prescribed, but there's still work being undertaken from an engineering perspective with respect to the DA for the operational work permit. Is that nearing a completion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So we will, at a future meeting, potentially the next meeting, we'll have a resolution for council on that matter.
Other questions from the development report? Draft plan scheme. The state asks for a pause on that, is it correct? Yep. What's the period of delay likely to be with that pause?
15 years of this day, so 20. I'm not sure on that. But it's not long. We just have to provide them with some more information, which we have.
And is that
Last week it was the additional information in relation to flooding. In Alpha.
are they questioning our limited development clauses? Or mapping? The questions around flooding, was it around our limited development or around our mapping?
Sorry, I'm not sure, Mr. Mayor.
Was a feasible alternative assessment report?
So that we have to provide them with our state had mapping, which was the mapping area of the flooding in Alpha was a lot more extensive than what we believe it to be. So we have to provide an alternative report, which we have done. So that goes to the state for assessment.
Which agency?
Well, it goes to state development. I don't know whether they then pass that through to other agencies.
Okay.
Because they were, so it was mainly the flooding because their assessment of flooding was a lot more extensive than what we believe it to be.
Further questions? Okay, time being 10 o'clock, let's not break for more tea. I want to invite Councillor Plum back inside. Oh, sorry, can I somebody move that we receive the planning and development report? Councillor Arthur, seconded Councillor Gleeson. Those in favour? 6-0. Three, four, two, community care services report. Can I somebody move that we receive the report? Councillor Gleeson, seconded. Councillor Hanson, those in favour? 6-0. Councillor Plum probably hasn't returned. She has, but she's not in the room, so. Any questions? Community care? Being none, economic development, 343, or someone move we receive the report. Councillor Arthur, seconded Councillor Rogers, those in favour? Carried 6-0. On the Bark Red, which was discussed earlier, Rick, your experience here, even though the request will go to the Minister, more than likely a brief request will come back to the local main roads office to understand that. We've perhaps having a meeting with Eric, to give him early visibility of what's likely to come his way. There any benefit to that?
Mr. Mayor, I think it'd be a good idea to let him know what we're doing. Decision may not be back to him, is what Hampton, the planning guys, but certainly we can let him know.
Yeah. So just maybe
They
you
have
already have
started conversations with them.
That's all. Further? Anything on the planning and development, economic development report? Somebody move the workplace health and safety report. Councillor Peoples, second Councillor Plum. Those in favour? 7-0. Questions? Three, four, five. Project progress report. Somebody move that we receive that report. Councillor Plum, Councillor Gleeson, those in favour?
I'm leaving the room.
7-0. Yep.
So,
We'll just limit those questions, as was noted during the declarations, to anything around the Porter Street issue to hold until Councillor Peoples leaves the room. Councillor Peoples, do you have any questions?
Mr. Mayor, the top line in this report, we've got the disabled access, and we've got a budget of 20,000, and then an estimated cost of 62,000. Where are we at with that? Do we,
Construction.
what are we going to do? Do we need to allocate more money, or do we, that's probably, you've got a 20,000, you've got 3 times what we've budgeted. So, do we need to talk about whether we're going to go ahead, or do we talk amongst ourselves and allocate what's missing there, or?
Mr. Mayor, well, the project's in progress. The cost, the original quote that we received was substantially more than what we budgeted. But we found savings in of $30,000 in the other disabled funding that we've received. So we've added that to the 20,000. We've actually got 50,000 in funding for that project.
Okay, well, Mr. Mayor,
Which funding was that? LRCIP?
Yes.
So it wasn't actually disabled funding, it was just a funding source that we allocated to disabled access.
Yes. So when we applied for the fund, when we applied for the LRCIP, that's the bucket of money that's $1 million, and then we list all the projects, and then we make it fit within the $1 million. So we had I think it was 105,000 for disabled disability access, which was used for toilets, pool access, ramps.
So so we've taken 20,000 off another access.
Yeah, because we'd saved that money.
Sorry, we've taken it off or we just didn't spend it?
We just didn't spend it.
So we completed the project?
Yes.
All right, well, Mr Mayor, I said earlier in the meeting that, I want us to stick to budget, and I know that there's been a bit of grabbing money from somewhere else. I think from now on, if possible, Mr Mayor, if we've got a budget item, and we'll probably agree to the swaps, but when it's 3 times of what we've allocated as a budget line, I think they've got to start coming back to council.
So what are we getting for $62,000? More than is that what's done now?
The ramp. What's done there, plus the doorway access.
And so, can we do Aramax for 20,000?
Yes, so the quote Aramax in progress, the ramp there is at 11,000. To actually purchase the ramp, then obviously got all the installation, so it'll be done before the end of June as well.
So there's 32,000 in savings. So no council funds will be required to match that 62,000, to complete that 62,000?
No, the council, it's fully funded within the bucket of funding. I think the quote
42,000, sorry.
I understand that it's fully funded in the bucket of funding, Mr Mayor, but it's still been allocated $20,000 by council.
Yeah, so I'm totally agree. There's $42,000 been allocated to a project we didn't allocate it to.
And it's just gone ahead without any consultation with us, and all we need is to be asked, we're going to have an overrun here, are you happy to go ahead? Can we shift this from here to there? But I don't think there's an authority there to do that. I'd like to see it to come back to council. So as we're in the know of it, I just think there's we've got ourselves into a situation where we had a fair bit of money in cash reserves, and I think we've dwindled that away because we've done things like this. We need to, we've set a budget, we've got to say as close to it as we can, or if we need to amend it, come back and we'll talk about it and amend it.
That's the point from mine. Budget's been set at 20 grand, cost to construct is 3 times that. Can't help that. But there was no approval to expend over $20,000 given by council at any stage. And given that it used a funding body, it was offsetting council capital expenditure for that period. I think the decision needed to be made in the light of, was it the best use of that $42,000 of funding or not? I agree totally, Councillor Peebles.
That was the only question I had, Mr Mayor, so I'll...
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions relating to the project report? Moving on, Councillor Peoples is still here if you want to talk about Ward Street. He's gone now.
Mr. Mayor,
Councillor.
similar to what we were just discussing, there's a Kubota tractor in Aramac, budget $50,000, we spent $76,000. There's no sale of that machine, did we retain that machine? Because
Sorry, can you just direct me? Page, the second page?
second page, yeah.
Halfway down, where are we?
No, fourth from the top, it's highlighted in the red, minus $26,901.
Okay.
There's no, was there a sale or did we retain that vehicle?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it goes to Masco Auctions on 26th this one.
It's going to auction.
That'll be the case for a few of these, I'd imagine, is it? So there's another round of auctions shortly.
Next week.
With the variable message board, says a $24,000 budget and a $47,000 message board. Once again, when we did the budget, did we obviously didn't allocate enough funds because I would have thought a message board would have been priced. You know, we should have had the price. I would have thought a little bit better than $23,000 difference.
There, that was an error in our budgeting. So we did have the price 24,000, but I didn't realise the time that they come in pairs. Two. So I budgeted 24, but it's actually 24 by 2. Okay. So that's an error in not understanding what's in.
How many do we have?
Yeah, it was one pair.
Yeah.
So you've got to have one at each end of that. It's not here.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, the VMS boards, not the not traffic lights.
Yeah, they're not the signs for around town that installed either. They're a piece of plant there.
And that's what some of our group Get Ready funding was funding towards that.
These. Yeah.
Further questions?
No? Yes? Maybe?
On the next, I'm just going to ask a question.
Well, we'll break for morning tea if we're finished with this. Sounds,
The projects, the solar project for the water treatment plant in Barcaldine is budgeted at 130,000. Quotes come in at 171, which is indicated there in that
188, is it? Or is it?
less GST.
Oh, yes, sorry, 171,584. That hasn't happened yet, though. That's just the quote.
Yes, well, we've got to spend that money by the 30th of June, so.
So that quote is for a supply and installation of a 99.84 kilowatt solar system. To offset operational costs incurred from mains power utilisation of the Acacia Street Ball. Councillors, there's an additional $40,000 to complete that project as per the scope. Would you like to proceed with the scoped works or change the scope to match the budget?
The solar is expected to save $50,000 a year in electricity for that site.
Mr Mayor, if we de-scope it to fit the budget, what impact does that have on the power supply for the capacity for the pumps?
Oh, I could imagine a good one, that's, yeah, but I don't know the
Well,
answer.
it's, yeah.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I had the meeting with the representative from Total Solar, and he said, yes, you can reduce the costing. It would be reducing the panels that they'd be installing. He said because you can add on to the panels later on, but you would have to do all the cabling at one stage, at the first stage. So he can modify it. He just said your best representation at the beginning is to go, if you can, if not, he can give me another quote.
Does that limit though, the obvious question, I'm pretty sure I know the answer to, that limits the amount of power that we have available to run the pumps, does it not? The amount of saving.
It will reduce the savings, yes, because you won't have as much solar feeding into it.
And then, Mr Mayor, to have the additional panels put on later will cost us more for mobilisation.
Per panel than it does if we do it now, I would imagine.
Yeah.
That's on flood. We'll come back to you, Councillor.
Yeah, I'm agree with.
Oh no, I'll let you think, sorry, I wasn't trying to rush you.
Yeah, I just think that we've got to set it up properly in the beginning.
That's on hands.
I think we should go for what's here, the savings, but I'd also like to find some scope money for the budget somewhere else that we could rather than, if possible.
I think we've got to go with it, Mr Mayor, but I'm just wondering, because it's solar and saving energy, is there any other ways and means of finding dollars from, rather than out of the council budget?
Well, it is funding through DCP, so there may be savings in other DCP projects that we could.
Through you, Mr Mayor, can we have those figures turned up before we... For mine, I think it makes sense to go ahead with it, but just so that we're aware of if we still have money in that
Yeah,
bucket.
so the only issue we've got is we've got to spend the money by the 30th of June, so.
So there's more money available in that budget without actually touching council money. That's
we
what I'm
can see if we
saying.
can find extra.
40,000 is probably a stretch, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Rogers, your thoughts?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I think I'm in agreement to go with the new quote. Just this is a little bit different to some of the other things. Going over budget doesn't do anything for us financially, but this one actually is going to give us a return of $50,000 a year. So it really, to me, I would like to go ahead with it and to start recouping those electricity costs. as soon as possible.
Yeah, that was a documented report. It's a little bit the same. I think we can nearly realise the savings in the first year to justify the investment, but I'd also agree with Councillor Hanson, if there's scope within the DCP bucket to minimise our need to invest, that would be the best outcome if it's possible. Councillor Gleeson first, yeah.
Mr Mayor, down at the bottom of the page, I don't think there's, I think it's the same money, DCP, for messaging boards, community LED lights, there's $65,000 there. Straight up, 48, there's only 48% of the budget being spent there, straight up.
It's still in progress.
It's still in progress. Okay. But anyway, I believe that we've got to move on this.
Councillor Arthur, would you like to more time? It's not agenda, I'm aware of that.
Yeah, would we be able to have a better idea by sometime today, as opposed to pushing it off for too much longer?
Is there any way we can, and what precisely you looking
Oh,
for?
just as other councillors have mentioned, if there is savings in that DCP bucket, then, yeah, if we've got those realised or relatively confident that that money is still in that funding bucket.
Right. Let's just have a look at that and we'll revisit this before the meeting finishes.
Yeah.
Okay, let's break for morning tea, 10:22.